Hey there, this is Professor Bahara, and I'm speaking from Accurate Physics. In Accurate Physics, we talk about different concepts or the problems, math problems related to physics and various kinds of concepts related to physics. We also talk about the history of physics and educational videos on some topics related to instruction and or something like technologies related to physics or science. Please subscribe this channel if you haven't subscribed yet. So to get started with today's topic, I will talk about the debate between geocentrism and heliocentrism that was raised long ago, about more than 2000 years ago in Greek. So what is actually geocentric and heliocentric model? So according to geocentric model, the Earth, which is called Geo, is at the center of everything, and everything else, including all the other planets, stars, all the other materials, goes around this Earth, which is geocentric model. Okay. On the other hand, heliocentric model argues that the sun is at the center of everything, and the planets goes around, right? Right now, we know most details about heliocentrism, right? Not everything, but the planets of this solar system goes around. But at that time, so these debates are somehow limited, they don't know every details, but there are two kinds of belief. The Greek philosophers, ancient Greek philosophers divided into two categories, in which one category believes in geocentrism and another group of scientists, philosophers, more accurately, we can say, they believe on heliocentric model. So geocentric model was favored by Aristotle, a well-known personality in science, Greek philosopher, and another Greek philosopher or physicist who supports this model, which is the geocentric model, was Ptolemy. So these are two prominent thinkers at that time who supports geocentric model. Actually, this geocentric model was somehow explained by religious personalities as well. That is something like the concept at that time. On the other hand, there are some revolutionary thinkers like Aristarchus and Seleucus. So these philosophers thinks against geocentric model, which is revolutionary at that time. It's a huge stake. You need a lot of effort or a lot of mental imagination to talk out of the box, because the heliocentric model was quite revolutionary in comparison to geocentric model, right? Now let's see the difference between geocentric and a heliocentric model. Right here, you can see in the first figure represents the geocentric model, in which the central blue sphere is the Earth, and all the planets going around in the circle, small circles and big circles. Small circles are called epicycles, and these big circles are called deferents. There is something like retrograde motion exhibited by the planets, and that retrograde motion is explained by the motion of the planets in epicycle. We can see from this figure, the moon is also going around Earth, which is true, but sun is not, right? From today's perspective, geocentrism. But in this model, geocentric model, in this image, the first figure, the sun is also going around, okay? And on the other hand, in geocentrism, sun is at the center and all the planets going around, and the moon is going around Earth, right? There are several other moons, more than 200 moons of our planets in this solar system. So all of the moons in this figure, you can just see one moon of the Earth, but there are more than 200 moons as we know today. Those goes around the other planets in solar system. Okay. So the first person who for the first time systematically understand and they try to understand the nature and they put forward the theory behind it was Aristotle. We call the Aristotelian physics. And his understanding of nature was from observation, reasoning, and logical deduction. That's why this is something we can call it like science, because we know, the science comes out of observation, the reasoning, and the logical deduction. So he has, of course, great contribution in science and developing concepts related to philosophy or science. But his model of cosmology, which was geocentric model, was not correct. According to his cosmological model, which is geocentric, Earth is at the center of the universe. And it is surrounded by concentric spheres composed of the elements. And later on, I will talk about his elements. What does he mean when he talk about elements? What is meaning of his elements? The elements today are not according to the definition given by Aristotle. Later on, I will talk about that. Okay, and including sun, moon, and the planets, and all other stars that we can see were composed of an ether, which are the different elements than the composition of this planet Earth and concentric sphere, which is called the celestial sphere. Okay, so this was his understanding, Aristotle's understanding. So what was his theory of the elements? Let me a little bit talk about the elements that Aristotle was talking about. According to the Aristotle, this universe or this cosmos is made out of 4 elements. At least Earth, because he has a different definition of the elements, different kind of elements for sun, stars, and moons, right? He call it ether. But as far as the composition of this planet is concerned or celestial sphere is concerned, there are 4 elements, which is earth, water, air, and fire. So these are Aristotle's elements. He also put forward the theory of motion. According to his theory, there are 2 kinds of motion. First one is natural motion. In natural motion, the elements substance has certain kind of motion they tends to follow. For example, the earth and the water tends to move downwards, as he had seen, observed from a different perspective. Earth and water, earth means something physical substance like stone, rocks, right? Or something heavy things. This means earth, right? It goes downwards, and water also always goes downwards. So this is the natural motion of earth and water. On the other hand, fire and air tends to move upwards. So this is the natural motion explained by Aristotle. He also said there is kind of motion, we can call it violent motion. In violent motion, you need to apply some external force and particle will move. It might be moving in the direction of the natural motion or in the direction opposite to the natural motion, right? For example, the natural motion, by nature, earth and water goes downwards, right? But if you apply outside force, which causes the violent motion of the water and earth, it can go up. Similarly, fire and air can go down if you apply external force from outside. So these are other contributions given by Aristotle. So my today's topic, the main concern is related to geocentrism and heliocentrism. That's why I would like to talk about some other thinkers who support this geocentrism. And other thinker who supports geocentrism was Ptolemy. And he explained geocentrism very well in terms of epicycles and different because the motion of the planets was complicated according to the geocentrism. There is the kind of motion in which planets are going backward, not in same direction, like motion of the Mars, right? We call it the retrograde motion. That kind of motion can be explained by using these cycles, small circles you can see in this figure, which are called epicycles, right? And these big circles are called deferents. So by using the concept of epicycles and deferents, the Ptolemy explained the geocentric model, and he explained more detail with uh, further explanation, detailed explanation with reasoning, right? He had given the epicycles and the concept of deferent and so on. So that's why he has great contribution to establish geocentrism. However, it was wrong. That was bad goal. Okay. He also has scientific study on the planets, stars. He had tabulated and predicted about so many planets. It was systematic, observed, and it was really scientific kind. He also cataloged a lot of stars, the positioning of stars, and the number of stars where they are located. So it was great achievements at that time. Later astronomers use his data, his tables, his predictions, and the catalogs of stars to understand celestial objects, planets, stars, and so on. Okay, so these are two thinkers, Aristotle and Ptolemy, who put forward and try to establish the concept of geocentric model. So now let me talk about who at that time, ancient Greek, antiquity, put forward some concept which is against geocentrism, which we call heliocentrism, which is actually true. It was given, it's not a job, right? This concept, the heliocentric concept, heliocentric model was given by Aristarchus about at the same time when Aristotle was supporting geocentrism. This was a revolutionary idea, revolutionary model at that time. It challenged the prevailing geocentric cosmological model. And it's very difficult to establish when you try to put forward something revolutionary against the concept at the time, the principles, established principles at that time. It is really difficult. It happens present time as well, right? If you go against something which is established, well established scientifically or philosophically, it's really hard. That's what exactly it happened. Nobody understood him. And it takes about 2000 years, 2 millennia to get back to this model until Nicholas Copernicus from 16th century, I think 17th century, again put forward this heliocentric model. So according to Aristarchus, sun is centered at the center of the universe and the planets goes around. That was his model. He also measured the sizes and the distances of the planets and the stars. He correctly summarized that the sun was much larger than the earth and earth was much larger than the moon. That is also a great contribution because it was very hard to figure out exactly the size of moon, earth, and sun at that time. There is no technology developed, and this is in the right direction, right? Heliocentric model. If we were able to understand a heliocentric model somewhere 2000 years ago rather than just 400 years ago, remember how advanced science you will have right now, right? But we can just imagine right now, we can do anything. Fast is fast. It's a limited acceptance. Actually, nobody liked his concept at that time because Aristotle was quite famous. Everybody liked to hear from Aristotle. Nobody liked to hear Aristarchus' concept, view of the cosmology, cosmological model. There was another person, another thinker who supports Aristarchus. He was Seleucus, and he put forward the physical reasoning behind this concept. He employed the physical reasoning and observations to argue in favor of heliocentrism. Even after Seleucus supports this concept, nobody favored the heliocentric model, which is a really very bad news for humanity because if we were able to understand this concept long ago, our science, our physics would have been developed more than what we have today. At least we would have been 500 or 1000 years advanced in science. But we missed the boat. There is no way to get back.